I never thought I'd be telling this story, but here I am. Everyone thinks they know what happened between Grant and me, but they don't know the whole truth. They don't know how hard I tried to make things work, or how much I put up with before everything fell apart. I'm Brielle, and I'm 31 years old. Grant is 38, and we met at this fancy work dinner 5 years ago. He was already pretty successful in real estate development, while I was just starting my social media marketing career. Looking back, maybe the age gap should have been a warning sign, but honestly, he seemed perfect, stable, mature, and totally different from the guys I usually dated. The first couple years were great. Grant gave me the space to figure out my career, and I didn't have to stress about money like my friends did. He had this beautiful house in the suburbs, and I moved in after we got married, but that's when things started getting complicated. See, Grant was always super busy with work, like constantly on his phone, always having these emergency meetings that would run late into the night. I get it, real estate is demanding, but come on, who needs to be on calls until midnight? I started feeling lonely, really lonely. I'd try to talk to him about it, but he'd just say something about securing our future or whatever. Classic Grant, always thinking about tomorrow instead of today. I tried everything to get his attention. I'd plan these nice dinners, but half the time he'd call to say he was working late. I'd suggest weekend trips, but there was always some deal he couldn't step away from. Even when we were both home, he'd be in his office while I sat alone watching Netflix. It's like I was living with a ghost. My friends kept telling me I was lucky to have such a responsible husband. They'd say things like, "At least he's not out partying," or "He's building a future for you both." But what good is a future if you're miserable in the present? I needed someone to actually be there. You know? The breaking point came when I decided to start my own social media consulting business. I had this amazing opportunity to work with some up-and-coming brands, but I needed some startup money. When I brought it up to Grant, he got all weird about it. He started asking all these questions about my business plan and projected returns. It's like he didn't believe in me at all. That's when I started using some of our joint account money for my business expenses. I mean, it was our money, right? And I was doing it for us, to build something of my own. But Grant freaked out when he saw the transactions. He said I should have consulted him first. We had this huge fight where he basically called me irresponsible. Me, irresponsible. Just because I didn't want to write up some boring spreadsheet before following my dreams. I remember sitting there in our kitchen, watching him go through the bank statements with this disappointed look on his face. He kept talking about financial responsibility and communication. But all I could think about was how he never listened when I tried to tell him how lonely I was. How could he lecture me about communication when he was the one who was never around? That's when I finally snapped. I told him he needed to stop complaining about being lonely at work all the time, about how stressed he was, about how hard everything was for him. I said if he was so lonely, maybe he should try actually being present in his marriage instead of just providing for it. The look on his face, I knew I'd hit a nerve, but honestly, he needed to hear it. After that night, things got really weird between us. Grant started coming home earlier, but it wasn't like I'd hoped. Instead of spending time with me, he joined this business networking group. Started going to the gym more. He said he was working on himself or something. Meanwhile, I was still stuck at home, feeling more alone than ever. I didn't know it then, but that fight in the kitchen was just the beginning. If I'd known what was coming next, maybe I would have handled things differently. But then again, maybe not. Some things you just can't see coming, even when they're right in front of your face. Remember how I said Grant started working on himself? Well, I should have paid more attention to what that actually meant. Looking back, the signs were all there, but I was too caught up in my own stuff to notice what was happening right in front of me. It started with small changes. He stopped telling me about his work problems. Started dressing better, not just for work, but like all the time. He got really into fitness, which I originally thought was just some midlife crisis thing. But then I noticed he was always texting and smiling at his phone. When I asked about it, he'd just say it was his networking group chat. I'll never forget the day I realized what was really going on. I was at Nordstrom, trying to return some stuff I'd bought with our joint account. Okay, maybe I'd gone a little overboard with the shopping lately, but retail therapy is a real thing. My card got declined. Right there, in front of everyone. Super embarrassing. When I called Grant about it, he dropped this bomb on me. He'd opened his own separate account and moved most of our money there. I was furious. Like, who does that to their wife? But when I got home ready to confront him, I found him sitting at the kitchen table with this weirdly calm look on his face. He had all these papers spread out in front of him. That's when he told me he'd met someone else, not just anyone else. Her name was Diana, and she was some hotshot financial advisor he met through his networking group. The worst part? He wasn't even sorry about it. He sat there telling me how Diana understands him, how they share the same values and goals. Apparently, she's helping him optimize his investment portfolio, or whatever. I mean, could you get any more boring? But the way his face lit up when he talked about her, I'd never seen him look like that when talking about spreadsheets before. I tried pointing out how this was totally his fault. If he hadn't been so obsessed with work, if he'd actually been there for me, none of this would have happened. But he just looked at me with this sad smile and said, "Brielle, I was lonely because you never took my concerns seriously. When I talked about work stress, you dismissed it. When I worried about our spending, you called me controlling. Diana actually listens." Can you believe that? He's trying to pin this on me. Sure, maybe I wasn't always super interested in hearing about his work drama, but that's because it was always the same thing. And yeah, maybe I spent a bit too much sometimes, but I was just trying to make our home nice and build my business. It's not my fault he couldn't see that. The real kicker? Apparently they've been dating for 2 months. 2 whole months. While I was sitting at home feeling guilty about using our joint account for my business, he was out there having dinner with his financial fairy godmother. He even said she's been helping him set boundaries and prioritize his happiness. Since when did Grant care about any of that self-help stuff? Now he's talking about divorce. Says we want different things in life, that we have incompatible financial values. He's using all these fancy therapy words, probably stuff Diana taught him. And get this, he's actually happy. Like, genuinely happy. I see his posts on LinkedIn. Yeah, I still check Sumi, and he's got this whole new life. He's speaking at business conferences, started some investment club, and Diana's always there in the photos, looking all polished and professional. Meanwhile, I'm stuck trying to figure out how everything went so wrong. My business isn't doing great. Turns out you need more than just good ideas and Instagram filters to make money. Most of my friends are taking his side, saying I should have seen this coming. Even my sister, who's usually on my team, said maybe I should reflect on my choices. As if I'm the one who threw away 5 years of marriage for some woman who probably color codes her closet. I keep thinking about that night I told him to stop complaining about being lonely. I didn't mean for him to go find someone else. I just wanted him to be present in our marriage. But instead of fixing things with me, he went and built this whole new life without me. And the worst part? He seems better off now than he ever was with me. Everyone keeps telling me I need to move on and focus on myself. But they don't get how impossible that is when your whole life is falling apart. The divorce papers came last week. Grant's lawyer, who's probably another one of Diana's friends, sent this whole folder of documents showing every purchase I made with our joint account. They're trying to use my financial irresponsibility against me, like buying nice things for our home was some kind of crime. I had to move out of our house. Well, technically, I didn't have to, but I couldn't stand being there anymore. Everything reminded me of how different things are now. I'm staying in this tiny apartment that costs way more than it should. My business is basically dead. Turns out most of my clients were Grant's contacts who felt bad for me. I tried reaching out to some of them, but apparently, they're all working with Diana's marketing person now. How convenient. The worst part is seeing them everywhere. Not just on LinkedIn anymore. They're all over our local business community. Grant and Diana hosted this huge charity gala last month. The theme was financial literacy for youth, or something equally pretentious. Everyone who's anyone was there, including most of our old friends. I wasn't invited, obviously, but I saw all the photos. Diana wore this gorgeous designer dress that probably cost more than my rent. She looked annoyingly perfect, standing next to Grant while he gave some speech about empowering through education. I ran into them at Riverside Cafe the other day, my favorite breakfast spot, by the way, which they've apparently claimed as their territory now. Grant looked different. Not just healthy and well-dressed, but lighter somehow. Like all the stress I supposedly caused him just vanished. They were having this intense discussion over their laptops, probably planning their next power couple move. Diana saw me first, and you know what she did? She smiled. Actually smiled at me, like she felt sorry for me or something. I couldn't help but notice the giant ring on her finger. Apparently, they're engaged already. The ink on our divorce papers isn't even dry, and he's already planning his next wedding. My mom says I should be happy he's happy, that it means he'll be more generous in the divorce settlement. But how can I be happy when he's living the life I was supposed to have? We were supposed to build something together, but instead, he's building it with her. The thing that really gets me is how everyone acts like this is some sort of fairy tale ending. Grant finally found someone who understands him, they say. Diana's really helped him grow. Nobody seems to remember that I was the one who stood by him when he was just starting out, when he worked those crazy hours and needed someone to come home to. I supported him then, but apparently, that doesn't count for anything now. My sister suggested I try therapy, said maybe I need to work through some things. She thinks I'm not handling the divorce well, but I'm handling it just fine. I'm not the one who threw away a marriage the minute someone shinier came along. Sure, maybe I've drunk texted Grant a few times, asking how he could do this to us. And maybe I did drive by their house once or twice. Okay, several times, but that's normal, right? Anyone would be curious about where their husband's living with his new perfect girlfriend. I tried dating again, just to show everyone I'm moving on too. Downloaded all the apps, went on a few dates, but it's hard to find someone when you're barely keeping your head above water financially. Plus, every guy I meet either knows Grant through business or has heard about our divorce through the grapevine. This town isn't as big as I thought it was. Last week, I saw them at the bank. My new one, since I can't go to our old one anymore. They were in some private office, probably planning their perfect future together. Diana was pointing at something on a tablet, and Grant was nodding along, looking all interested and engaged. You know, the way he never looked when I tried to talk to him about my business ideas. They didn't see me, but I stood there watching them for a minute. They just seemed so in sync. Like they spoke the same language or something. Everyone says time heals all wounds, but they never tell you what to do when you have to watch the person who wounded you living their best life. How do you move on when everywhere you look, there's a reminder of what you lost? And how do you deal with the fact that maybe, just maybe, you didn't lose it at all? You pushed it away without even realizing what you were doing. I hit rock bottom last night. Like actual rock bottom. Not the kind I thought I'd hit when Grant first told me about Diana, or when I had to move out of our house, or even when my business finally went under. No, this was different. This was me, standing outside their house at 2 a.m. in the rain, drunk on cheap wine, trying to work up the courage to ring their doorbell. I know how that sounds, trust me, I know. But I'd spent the whole day scrolling through their wedding photos. Yes, they actually got married. It was this gorgeous vineyard ceremony that probably cost more than I make in a year. Diana wore this stunning dress that made her look like some kind of finance goddess, and Grant? God, I've never seen him smile like that. Not even on our wedding day. So there I was, mascara running down my face, holding this folder of old photos from when Grant and I were happy. I'd convinced myself I just needed to show him, remind him of what we had. But as I stood there, getting soaked, I saw them through their kitchen window. They were doing dishes together. Actually doing dishes at 2 a.m. Diana was washing, and Grant was drying, and they were laughing about something. It was such a simple moment, but it broke something in me. I didn't ring the doorbell. Instead, I sat down on their wet driveway and just lost it. Complete breakdown, ugly crying, the works. That's when their neighbor's security light came on, and I heard someone ask if they should call the police. Rock bottom, right there. The next morning, I woke up to a text from Grant. Turns out their neighbor had sent them security camera footage of my little driveway breakdown. I expected him to be angry, maybe even file a restraining order. Instead, he asked if we could meet for coffee. Not at our usual spots, but at this new place across town. I almost didn't go. The thought of facing him, especially knowing he'd seen me at my absolute worst, made me want to move to another country. But something about hitting rock bottom makes you brave. Or maybe just too exhausted to run anymore. When I got to the coffee shop, Grant was already there. No Diana this time, thank God. He'd ordered my usual drink, oat milk latte with an extra shot. After everything, he still remembered how I take my coffee. That small detail nearly set me off crying again. "Brielle," he said, and his voice was gentle in a way that made everything worse. "We need to talk about what happened last night." He wasn't angry. He wasn't even disappointed. He just seemed concerned. Like he was talking to a troubled friend, not his ex-wife who'd had a meltdown on his driveway. I started to launch into my usual defenses. How he'd abandoned me, how Diana had stolen my life, how none of this was fair. But he held up his hand and said something that finally got through to me. "You told me to stop complaining about being lonely," he said quietly. "But you never actually heard me when I tried to tell you why I was lonely. I needed a partner, Brielle. Someone who would take our future as seriously as I did. When I talked about work, I wasn't just complaining, I was trying to share my life with you. When I worried about our spending, I was trying to protect our future, but you treated me like I was the enemy." I wanted to argue, but the words stuck in my throat. Because sitting there, looking at the man I'd married, the man who now seemed so different and yet exactly the same, I started to see things I'd been blind to before. All those times he tried to talk to me about work, he wasn't ignoring me, he was trying to include me. Those conversations about budgets and spending, they weren't about controlling me, they were about building something together. Even his late nights at the office weren't about choosing work over me. He was trying to secure the future. I kept spending faster than he could save for it. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," I said, and for once, I wasn't trying to blame someone else. I felt so overshadowed by your success. I wanted to prove I could build something too." Grant nodded. "I know, and maybe I could have supported your dreams better. But Brielle, you didn't want support. You wanted a blank check. Every time I tried to help you create a real business plan, you accused me of not believing in you. Diana didn't steal your life. She just wanted the same things I did. Partnership, responsibility, shared goals." That's when he told me something that should have hurt, but instead felt like relief. He and Diana are expecting a baby. They're building the future I always said I wanted, but never actually worked for. He's opening his own real estate development firm, and she's handling the financial strategy. They're a team, in all the ways I never let us be. I'd love to say this conversation completely transformed me. That I walked out of that coffee shop a new woman, ready to take responsibility for my choices and build a better future. But real life isn't that simple. The truth is, I'm still struggling. I still get jealous when I see their posts online. I still sometimes want to blame Diana or Grant, or the universe, for how things turned out. But that night on their driveway changed something. Maybe it was hitting rock bottom, or maybe it was finally seeing them through that window, seeing the kind of partnership I could have had if I'd been ready for it. For the first time, I'm starting to understand that loneliness isn't just about having someone physically present. It's about being truly seen, heard, and understood. Grant tried to be seen by me, and I dismissed him. He tried to understand me, and I pushed him away. Last week, I started seeing a therapist. Not because my sister suggested it, but because I finally want to understand why I couldn't see what was right in front of me. Why I treated Grant's success like a threat instead of something we could share. Why I confused spending money with building a life. My therapist says it's good that I'm asking these questions, even if I don't have the answers yet. She says rock bottom can be a foundation if you let it. I'm not sure I believe that entirely, but I'm trying. I deleted the security camera footage from my phone. Yes, their neighbor sent it to me too, probably as a wake-up call. I unfollowed Grant and Diana on social media, not out of spite this time, but because I need to focus on my own story instead of obsessing over theirs. Yesterday, I applied for a real job, not as a business owner or social media guru, but as a marketing assistant at a small firm. The pay isn't great, and the title feels like a step backward, but it's honest work. My new boss actually asked me to create a content calendar and track ROI metrics. The old me would have called that boring and restrictive. Now, I'm just grateful for the structure. The weird thing is, ever since I stopped fighting reality so hard, things have gotten a little easier. Don't get me wrong, I'm still a mess. I still cry sometimes when I drive past our old house. I still have moments where I want to text Grant and beg him to remember what we had. But those moments are getting fewer and farther between. I told him he should stop complaining about being lonely, and now he's found happiness without me. The irony isn't lost on me. But maybe, just maybe, it's time for me to stop complaining too. To stop blaming everyone else for my loneliness, and start building the kind of life that could attract the kind of partnership I say I want. It's not a fairy tale ending. There's no Prince Charming waiting to rescue me, no magical transformation that will undo my mistakes. Just me, finally starting to face reality, one therapy session and one spreadsheet at a time. And honestly, maybe that's exactly the ending I need.